As I was thinking about various topics that I would teach, I needed to first decide what grade level I wanted to target for this assignment. Therefore, I chose to create a first grade lesson. I'm going to give a brief overview of what I would teach to the students, and this lesson will last for about a week, and I'm going to combine math as well as social studies. As we all know, SOLs seem to be in the forefront when creating lessons. During this presentation, I'll be covering the Virginia SOLs of math and history. In math, I'm going to be covering measurement, specifically coins, nickels, dimes, pennies, and quarters, and in history I will cover George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Due to the amount of material students are required to be taught and the time in which a teacher has, the teacher can combine or integrate lessons. For example, in my lesson, I'm going to be combining a math lesson with a history lesson. The students will be able to gain a greater knowledge of different topics while also saving time. I will begin my lesson by showing pictures of each coin. Then I will give the students a coin as a manipulative. I believe that hands-on learning is important. It makes learning come alive. I will begin with the penny. We will cover characteristics of the penny, such as color, texture, and the person on the coin, as well as the value of the coin. Once the student has grasped the concept and characteristics of what makes a penny, I would move on to the nickel. We would cover the same information, such as the color, the texture, the value, and the individual on the nickel. In order to cater to those students who are at a higher level and to differentiate learning, I would ask the students if they could predict how many pennies equal one nickel. Before moving on to the dime, I would give a brief overview of the penny and the nickel. I would have the students think, pair, and share their thoughts with a neighbor. They would share information about each coin, and then I would talk about the dime. We're going to share the characteristics such as the value, the color, the texture, and the individual whose face is on the coin as well. Finally, we would talk about the quarter and discuss the characteristics. I would be sure that each student had a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter. We would play a game in which I would give a clue, and they would have to put the specific coin to the side. For example, I might say, I'm thinking of a coin that is worth 5 cents. Which coin am I thinking of? The students should know that this is a nickel and place it to the side of their desk. Once the students grasped the characteristics of each coin and knew their value, I would have them work in small groups and count to see how much money they had. For example, I might say, if you have 3 nickels, how much money do you have? In order to differentiate learning, I would give the higher level students problems such as, if you have 2 dimes, 1 nickel, and 3 pennies, how much do you have all together? I want to teach the students that there are different ways to show the same amount of money. For example, I will start with the nickel and show the students that there are 2 ways to show 5 cents. You could either use 1 nickel or you could use 5 pennies. I want to begin with simple amounts and then get to more challenging problems. Next, I would move on to the dime. I would show the different ways to make 1 dime or 10 cents. For example, you could use 2 nickels, 1 nickel and 5 pennies, or 10 pennies. Then I would give the students the opportunity to use coins and show their own way they can make 10 cents, and this would be an interactive hands-on activity. And last, but certainly not least, I would show the different ways to make 25 cents. You could use 1 quarter, or you could use 2 dimes and 1 nickel, or 1 dime and 3 nickels, or 5 nickels, or 25 pennies. This might be easier for the higher level students to grasp, but I would work with all of the students in order to reach this point. You're probably wondering why George Washington's picture is on this slide after we have just talked about a math lesson. But George Washington's picture is found on the quarter. As a teacher, we need to integrate our material so that we can cover all of the material we are required to teach. So during my social studies lessons, we're going to cover important facts about George Washington. I would also like to cover the same information in regards to Abraham Lincoln. I'd like to note that Lincoln is found on the penny, and I'd also like to note that he was born in Kentucky, and I'd like to teach the students that the Lincoln Memorial was found after Abraham Lincoln. So these are some of the things we'll be talking about. Once we have covered George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, I would show the students a blank Venn diagram and would show them that we were going to fill one in. We're going to compare Washington and Lincoln, as well as decide how the two are alike. In each circle, we're going to fill in characteristics. In the middle, we're going to do characteristics that pertain to both individuals. We would fill in one blank together as a class, just as an example, and then I would give them the time to complete the Venn diagram by themselves. Then we would go over it as a class. If the students didn't have a key piece of information that I felt was crucial to their learning, I would have them to write it down on their own copy once we go over them as a class. As a way to review the material that was covered, or any material for that matter, it's so easy to create a fun game that the kids will love. This game is Jeopardy, and there are various templates that you can use in order to create one for your students. You can use a Jeopardy game for any subject. That doesn't just have to be for history or math. If I were to create a Jeopardy game from this lesson, I would create a title, maybe something like All About Coins, or How Well Do You Know Washington and Lincoln? Some of my categories might be Our First President or All About Lincoln. Kids love this game because it's interactive, engaging, and it makes learning fun, and it's just a great tool. As a way to assess the students' knowledge and how much they have learned about Washington and Lincoln, I'm going to have them pick either Washington or Lincoln, and they're going to write at least 2 complete sentences telling me something that they learned about them, individual. Then they'll draw a picture to support their writing, and this will show me which parts of the lesson I need to teach again, and maybe in a different format or style. I believe that the classroom should have a special place for students' work to be shared. A student's work should be acknowledged, and by having work posted, a student feels ownership and a classroom of community of learners is fostered. I would like to hang up the students' work that they did on their favorite president. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. I hope that you will try to integrate lessons into your classroom to maximize the students' learning. It may take some time to do so, but in the end, it will be well worth it, and your students will have learned a great knowledge of information.